Gospel according to Luke in the 4th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Then Jesus began to say to all in the synagogue in Nazareth, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." And all spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth. And they said, "Is not this Joseph's son?" And he said to them, "Doubtlessly you will quote to me this proverb, 'Doctor, cure yourself.' And you will say, 'Do here also in your hometown the things that we have heard you did in Capernaum.'" And he said, "Truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in the prophet's hometown. But the truth is, there were many widows in Israel in the time of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up for 3 years and 6 months, and there was severe famine over all of the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them, except to a widow in Zarephath in Sidon. And there were also many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elijah. None of them was cleansed, except Naaman the Syrian." And when they heard all of this, all in the synagogue were filled with rage. And they got up and drove him out of the town and led him to throw him the brow of a hill on which their own town was built, so that they might hurl him off the cliff. But he passed through the midst of them and went on his way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Yes. When you hear the hymnology that came out of African spirituals, especially out of the era of slavery, stop and think about the fact that it is an amazing thing that they accepted Christianity at all, given the fact that they were forced to go to the churches of their owners, sitting in the back in a balcony, while sermons were preached about the will of God and the hierarchy of human beings. But when they left, they would, as the hymn goes, steal away to Jesus. And they found a different Jesus than their owners had. And so, as we kick off what we call Black History Month, and we look at the text of this gospel, it almost is a precursor of something that would happen in the future, i.e. the more things change, the more they stay the same. Notice, last Sunday in the gospel, Jesus goes in and he quotes from the prophet Isaiah. And he says, "He has come to alleviate the poor, to free the captives, and to release those who are oppressed." And when the people heard his words, they were amazed at what they called the graciousness of those words. The root of graciousness, of course, being grace. And in the Greek word, it means more than just gracious. It means prophetically filled with grace. And he says, "In your hearing, these words have been fulfilled." Which is to say, before any action is even taken, the fact that he speaks graciously makes it a reality. And so today, when he says all of these things, all were amazed at the graciousness of the words coming from his mouth. And then all of a sudden they said, "Now wait a minute. This is Joseph's son. He doesn't come from somewhere else. Why not from Jerusalem or somehow from something other than Nazareth?" You will recall when Jesus was calling his disciples, and he called one of the disciples and said, "We just seen Jesus of Nazareth," and he says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth? That town, that podunk center?" And so all of a sudden, their graciousness, all of a sudden it dawns on them. This is an ordinary person, this Jesus. His father is a handyman, and he's taught Jesus, his son, to be so. Now all of a sudden he comes on the scene, and And he has these words that seem gracious, but wait, let's stop and think about who he really is. And Jesus knows what they're up to. He says to them, doubtless you will quote to me this proverb, Doctor, cure yourself. And you will say, do here also, here now in your hometown, all the things we have heard you did in Capernaum. Which is to say, show us a miracle. If you really are this gracious person and not just Joseph's son, put on a show. After all, we're your neighbors. We deserve it. Not them. And then he goes on to say, pulling out of scriptures, who they are. How Elijah doesn't do anything in his hometown, but actually does it in a pagan land. How he talks about Elijah doing the same thing. And they know they're insulted at that moment. No, they're more than insulted. They're enraged. Who are you to speak to us this way? You, who we know, are a handyman. And suddenly the graciousness of the words are lost. This is not how you will treat us. So are you going to insult us? We shall get rid of you. And in their rage, they hurried him along to the brow of a hill, and believe it or not, they want to kill him. Seems kind of petty, doesn't it, to you? They want to kill him over what he said. But when you speak words of truth sometimes to people who hide behind their traditions, or from the fact of who they claim they are better, perhaps, it angers people. And it's almost as if this whole text is a prelude to what would happen during the civil rights movement and the emergence of Dr. Martin Luther King. After finishing his PhD degree at Boston University, he comes back south. It's only his intention to become a preacher in the Baptist church. But something has started. There has been movement among the people, the black people of the South especially, that they're not going to be held down by the Jim Crow laws. And so they begin to organize. And in that organization, they recognize the oratory skills of Dr. King, and they say to him, you must come and be part of this movement. And he doesn't want to. He didn't go through all of what he did in his studies to do this, not to be some type of rabble-rouser, but somehow he reluctantly agrees that he will be part of it. And as that movement grows, the reaction of what we talked about last week, the gospel is good news, is bad news, starts to emerge. In the midst of all of this, one of the people who was working in that coalition, and you remember, is shot dead right in front of his house with his wife and children inside. And now we know that the bad news is that if you're going to take all of this talk about Jesus and the gospel, you had better be ready for conflict. And so Jesus says, I have come to relieve the oppression of those who are oppressed. Easily said, isn't it? But anybody of us who are old enough to recall what you saw on television when the group of the black people came across that famous bridge down south and met halfway by Bull Connor, sheriff, and all those guns, and all those people who were held out to make sure, to make absolutely sure, that justice was not going to be served, and that those who are oppressed would remain oppressed. I have come to set the captives free, Jesus said. And so in the thick of all of this, when the marches continue, all of them are hauled off to jail. And then almost curious, almost humorous thing happens were not so tragic. Children start marching. and they arrest all the children. And there's so many children that it overflows the jails and they have to hold them into schools. So massive are the arrests. So massive that the good news of the gospel for those people had turned into bad news because they simply couldn't oppress people hard enough or fast enough or have places to hold them. It seems so eerie, doesn't it, in retrospect, that history couldn't possibly happen. And so, when you read more about King, you realize that this took its toll because he had countless absolute days of oppression and depression, to the point where there were days where he had to be coaxed out of bed because he didn't want to leave the room. He had entered into the war of what you might call the bad news of the gospel. Yet it was relentless. And when he was shot at the Lorraine Hotel, when the bullet shot out of that gun held in that hand, it isn't just that man who pulled the trigger. It was a collective conspiracy that comes out of the Old Testament when the brothers of Joseph decided that they couldn't stand him being the favorite of his father, and they said, "Let us kill him, and we will kill his dream." And then it goes on to say, of course, that Joseph emerges in Egypt and becomes the giver of food to his starving brothers later in life. But evil is that way, you know. It is so hellbound to get its own way that when it thinks it wins, it loses. Because in the murder of Dr. King, he entered into what we call Christian martyrdom. And in that martyrdom, his power becomes even stronger and more convincing. And things would never, ever be the same. Yet, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because we hardly have to imagine that we begin to realize that what King envisioned of justice rolling down like rivers, like streams of living water, is only partially filled today. You need only listen to the news and you will know why. We have a long way to go. So, in celebrating Black History Month, or in the remembrance of Martin Luther King, I think what we are celebrating is how people react to a text like this that we hear this morning. That the graciousness of Jesus' words that are spoken, and says, "I have come to aid the poor, to release those who are captive, to release the oppression of people who are oppressed," is as valid today as the day that he spoke it in his hometown to those people who couldn't stand to hear it because they may have to change their mind. And so, with the ongoing life of what the gospel is supposed to be, it constantly challenges its good news to those people who see it as bad news. But nevertheless, it is relentless, and it's never going to stop. It will only stop when people like you and I refuse to see it as what it is. That somehow what is written on the lintels above our church, "Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God," becomes our reality too. So, we have an option in life. That when we hear the gospel, do we hear good news or do we hear bad news? And if somehow it becomes out as bad news, it's because it's challenging our own inner inability or desire to even change about something that would block that good news. So every Sunday we start off with this confession and forgiveness, and we say, "Help us. Help us to be the bearer, not of bad news, but of good news." And that is the litmus touch, the litmus test, the common touch that every church is called to do. So in celebrating Black History Month, it isn't just about legislation. It isn't just about secular law. It comes right down and is grounded right deep into the gospel of Jesus. And either that gospel is going to be true or it's going to be opposed. And if it is opposed, it'll always be bad news to someone. And the only thing that we can do is constantly pray and to sing and to do our music and to break the bread and drink the wine. Hope to God that we are given the grace to be a family, to be a church that always